Hello, welcome back to Fiat in the Mess. I'm Annie Muller, joined with Hailey Skinner as always. We're so glad that you're here. On today's episode of Fiat in the Mess, we're going to be talking about some of the current trends around health maxing, optimal health, and longevity, and talk about the balance for moms between self-care and this cult of the body that we're surrounded by in the culture. So how do we take care of ourselves when our whole job description is caring for others? Before we get started, I want to ask you to please like and subscribe to the podcast, especially if you're on YouTube. That helps the algorithm, gets us out there. Please remember to share with anyone you think is interested and keep coming back to see what we're talking about on Fiat and the Mess. So, Hailey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So happy to be back.
Good to see you. All right. So this topic came up because I've been noticing in my algorithm when it comes to social media and just the things I'm seeing on the internet that there's a big conversation in the culture right now around what some people call health maxing or optimal health. Longevity is a big conversation. And it's not necessarily new. I mean, we've always had a culture obsessed with the body and obsessed with how we look and all of those things. But there is new science coming out and kind of new approaches that are more functionally medicine driven. And I thought this is an interesting topic for moms because we're bombarded with all of these tips and trades and people telling us what we should be doing, lots of people telling us what we should not be doing, when it comes to food and sleep and exercise. For me, because I'm in a later season of life, there's all kinds of opinions about what you're supposed to do in perimenopause and menopause and what you're not supposed to do. And so, but it occurred to me that, as always, the world's answer is pretty disordered and not exactly what we need to be focused on. And so what do we need to focus on? Um, and I thought this could be a fun conversation because Hailey and I are in such different seasons of life. And so I'm very curious to hear what she's bombarded with and what the challenges she faces when it comes to taking care of herself. And so this idea of self-care can be very charged and it can feel like something else you're failing at. And that is not what we want for you. And so we want to just talk about it in a healthy, constructive way, and then just also encourage you that you do need to take care of yourself and you do need to prioritize yourself, and it's not something to feel guilty about. The first scripture that comes to mind is from 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So, pretty straightforward that our bodies matter, that we are supposed to take care of them. St. Augustine has a very famous quote: take care of your body as if you're going to live forever. Take care of your soul as if you were going to die tomorrow. So, we cannot separate these two things, that we were given both, and we have to take stewardship of both. So I'm sure we're all familiar with that verse. But I thought we, sorry, okay. We don't want to discuss the merits of the different trends or approaches to health. That's not what we're going to discuss today. But I thought it would be good to just ask what the Catholic response is supposed to be to all these trends. And then again, think of how it affects us, particularly as mothers. So, Hailey, I would love to hear your perspective on what it's like in your season of life. I know you're not online a lot, which I love and respect about you, and that you have a phone that doesn't do much and that you work really hard to stay off the internet and out of the noise. And so I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who are trying to live similarly. I do think there's a trend moving us away from being online so much. Thankfully, I think there are pockets of communities rising up saying we don't need all this technology. So obviously, we hope you still have podcasts in your life because we want you to listen to us. But Hailey, how this idea of health maxing, optimal health, this kind of obsession with longevity in particular, how is that coming through in your world?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I'm not really on social media much anymore. I certainly was in the past. But I certainly still encounter these trends through advertisements, through conversations with friends. Um, and I just have a personal, strong drive to be healthy, to take care of myself, to present myself beautifully, take care of my family. And these trends definitely feed and can distort those good efforts. And so a couple of months ago, I still had Instagram. I was using social media and for what I thought was really good purposes and also just Pinterest, I would follow these really wholesome accounts and um, watch reels on making sourdough and decorating the house and raising chickens and raising children. So all of these accounts and then personal friends and family. So I would open up Instagram and kind of be overwhelmed by how beautiful other people's lives looked and all of their hobbies and
Mm,
skills and fitness trends. And really just found myself overwhelmed and so quickly saddened by the fact that my life doesn't look like that, or I'm not doing all of
mm,
those things, so I must be failing. And so I realized I kind of need to distance myself from social media, and I just decided for me it was good to delete it and just kind of give myself complete distance, because instead of turning off Instagram and then going and doing the thing that I was encouraged by, um, I had just wasted 30 minutes, watching other people doing the things I wanted to be doing with my
right.
life. And I had missed out on being present to my child while I was nursing her or while my son was playing and I was just scrolling. Um, so at this point, I'm really grateful to not be on social media, although I do think people can use it for really good things. So, um, but just in my personal life, I'm really blessed to be in friend groups that are very wholesome, where we're encouraging one another to live virtuously, to be better, to be healthy, trying not to be perfectionistic. So my peer group tends to be other young moms in my same season, so conversations that I'm having are often centered on things like pregnancy, labor and delivery, food, the postpartum season, breastfeeding or formula feeding, sleep, toddler behaviors, things
Yeah.
like that. Conversations that come up naturally with having young kids and being in the season of pregnancy and postpartum. Um, but even in this positive peer group setting that I'm in, there are so many opportunities for comparison, for jealousy,
Mm,
discontentment. For example,
mm-hmm.
one conversation that came up for me recently was some mothers' ability to just lose the baby fat so quickly,
Mm.
and other moms who just, find it impossible to
Yeah.
lose any baby fat,
Yeah.
a year or two after having a baby. Um, and
Yeah.
so these kinds of conversations come up all the time and just conversations surrounding health and how to take care of ourselves. I'm really blessed to be encouraged by the community of mothers I'm surrounded by, all striving to take good care of our families. Um, I'm part of a play group that meets weekly at a park and part of groups at my church and group chats. So these are all wholesome opportunities to be encouraged on our health journey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, I think the thing that I fall into the most, not from social media, but from these relationships, um, are are the temptations the devil gives me to believe that I'm just not healthy enough or just not skinny enough because, oh, look at this friend who just had a baby and already looks so good, or wow, she's making sourdough and fermenting her own pickles, and she has a huge garden, and she's raising chickens, and also her kids are sleeping through the night, so I must be
Right.
failing.
Right. Yeah, this is an interesting point because I think it actually really drives home why we're even seeing the trend is that we are so driven by comparison and by looking at, well, if someone else can do it, then I can do it too. And there part of that is good. Part of that is like we can encourage one another to work hard to strive. Life is about being uncomfortable. And that's a good thing, because on the other end of the spectrum, which is where this whole health maxing trend has come from, like the health maxing trend is a response to how unhealthy our country is. Like, there is a health crisis in America.
Mhm.
And we see it with children for sure, but definitely with adults, of like, there is an obesity crisis. There is an isolation and a loneliness crisis. These are problems the world is trying to solve. Now, some of them have Christ, and so they're offering good solutions, like good health solutions along with good theology. But a lot of it has turned into what St. John Paul II called the cult of the body, where we realize, wow, look at what the human body is capable of, which is really phenomenal. I know, like, we just had Olympics in the winter, right? And one of the things I love watching the Olympics with my kids and just commenting on like the wonder of creation. Look what God made the human body capable of. It's amazing. And it
Mhm.
says so much about what we are capable of when it comes to being disciplined and it comes to being committed to something. It's phenomenal what the human body can do. And so it makes sense that without the right understanding, without the right theology, you could start worshiping the body, which is something that's happened since the beginning of time. So
Mm.
I do think that that comparison compulsion is part of what lends to this obsession with the human body and with health. But it's also, if we look at like what is at the heart of there's also a fear of death. There's a fear of aging. There's a desire for control. And so again, when we separate these things from what God is calling us to do and how he's calling us to see our physical bodies, then it can get dangerous, and it can get um, to the point where we're so obsessed that it consumes us. And so, one of the things I'm seeing when I see these things online is like, to the point where people are foregoing really normal communal things, like in the name of health, or being afraid of the sun, being afraid of wine, being afraid of carbs. There's just all of this. No, no, if I can optimize my health in this way, then I will be succeeding. This affects women in a very particular way, because if we buy into the heresy that the body is everything, then our worth and our identity are tied up in the capabilities of our bodies and what they look like and how we're presenting that to the world. So if we only focus on the body, we're absolutely losing something. But if we say the body doesn't matter, we're also losing something. And so as a mom, it can be very easy to only prioritize the health and wellness of our children, our husbands, our families, and to think that our health is not as important, or we just don't have time for it. And that's equally problematic. So we don't want to buy into the craze of being completely obsessed with all the metrics and everything our body's doing, and losing the relational aspect of our life, or losing the real focus on self-gift that we are to give to our families. Um because as a mother, we really are called to a life of self-gift. So what does self-care look like then? I think is the question, the thing we want to talk about, because there are many resources out there, and some of them are really wonderful. And but then basically, how do we strike the balance between caring for ourselves and being so obsessed with our health and our bodies that we ignore everything else? How do we find
Mhm.
that balance? So, Haley, when I say self-care, particularly as a young mom, because I know when I was young and I would hear it, I'd be like, don't tell me I'm supposed to take care of myself. It's something else I'm failing at. Like, it would stress me out a lot.
Mhm.
Um, so what is your like internal response when you think about it?
Yeah. It used to make me cringe, that word, because like you were saying, similarly, like, how in the world am I supposed to spend hours a day by myself, to do all the things that I wanna do for myself, and,
Right.
but it's so important to take care of yourself. Self-care is so important when we understand it, and, when we understand it and do it rightly through, I think, through the lens of stewardship. Um, because like you're
Mm,
saying, it's all about self-gift. God has given us the gift of life, our bodies and souls. He's entrusted great responsibilities to us. And if we are to be able to serve him with our bodies, then we need to take good care of them. And really, in order to do the excellent work he's called us to. So, first, we need to see ourselves as stewards of this great and undeserved gift. Recently, I was really struggling to take good care of myself, and life was just so busy as it is, the demands on my time feeling so heavy. I was struggling to find time each week to exercise and shower and have any quiet prayer time, fold the laundry, sometimes even just, brushing my teeth was just the most insurmountable task. And so after brainstorming a little bit with my husband, we came up with this new plan that has really changed my life. And what I've been doing is just waking up an hour earlier, an hour before anyone else wakes up, which does require a
mm,
certain sacrifice of sleep. But I've found that it's been so worth it. And in this season of my life, it's really working. So I get to work out first thing in the morning. I take a shower, get ready for the day quietly, slowly. And then by the time my kids wake up, I have my coffee and I'm in my chair having prayer time. And I get to greet them. They wake up and mom's already awake, and that has kind of already changed the way that they wake up. I've noticed they're a little bit more calm, and it's a neat
mm,
kind of thing. Like when I and my husband are awake before anyone else,
for
it seems
them.
to set the tone for them. But yeah, this has radically changed the way that I approach the day. Kind of grateful for some quiet time. I love exercising, and so I had been trying to squeeze in an exercise, whenever I could, but now I can count on it. And then I get some time to make myself ready for the day. Before we made this change, I was kind of scared to ask for any time to myself every day, not wanting to be selfish. But what I've learned and now experienced is that when I have a full cup, I have more to give. And also whenever my morning routine doesn't work out as I had hoped to, say my kids wake up early or wake up sick or I miss my alarm or for whatever reason don't get to do those things that I would like to in the morning, I at least now have a new attitude about self-care, and I'm more creative about finding ways to squeeze in a workout or go walking or running with the kids during the day, or I'm
Mhm.
prioritizing these things a little bit more so that even if they don't work out when I had hoped they would, I'm creatively trying to find solutions throughout the day. And I've also
Yeah.
realized that I really want my kids to see me prioritizing self-care and to understand it rightly for themselves, knowing how to exercise, how to eat well, when to take breaks and when to
Mm.
take rest. All again because we're stewards of God's gifts. I want them to learn from my example how to take care of themselves too.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Actually, I years ago when my baby went to kindergarten and I had an identity crisis, I started working for a physician who worked in health. And the short version is I became a certified health coach. And one of the things in my studies that I found very inspiring was that statistically, they say for a healthy child generally has a healthy parent, and that people who grow up in homes where health has been there's been an example of good health are like 90% more likely to live healthy as adults. So in other words, which I guess that's probably not earth-shattering to anyone, but if we in other words, we are the example, and children will grow into healthy adults if they have a template for what that looks like. And so my husband and we are actually just talking about this because it's summer and I have some children who don't care to move their bodies. And we're trying to incorporate this as just this is part of what you do in a day. And I do think it's important to enjoy it. Exercise is not supposed to be punishment. Haley, when you said you love to exercise, I do too. So that it's I have to I have to be moderate. I'll exercise 3 hours a day. Like, just that I would rather do that really than almost anything else. So I have to, like, curtail and, like, prioritize, and I can't spend my whole day at the gym even though I'd love to. But for a lot of people, it is like an unpleasant association, or it's just not something you enjoy. And one thing I used to tell clients was find something that you enjoyed doing as a kid and start doing that. So maybe it was riding a bike, or maybe it was dancing, or maybe it was rollerblading, or, find an activity. Pickleball is one of those things. It's huge and fun, and a lot of people who don't think of themselves as athletes are finding that they enjoy it, and it really is just about movement. Um, and so this idea of stewardship is so important because it brings us back to that scripture, that recognizing our bodies are a gift. They are a gift, and also understanding that we are our body. We are not supposed to separate ourselves from it or consider that, oh, well, in heaven it won't matter. No, the Lord has called us to be stewards of this body and soul together. And so, when I think back to my seasons of early motherhood, I had always been an athlete in high school, and exercise was super important to me, and somewhere along the line I quit doing it. And I had a spiritual director after, I think it was after my third son was born. So we had 4 kids, and you know, I was stressed out and feeling really overwhelmed all the time. And she just started asking me, like, tell me about what you were like before you had kids. And exercise was this huge part of my life, like all through high school and then early adulthood before I had children. And then she asked, well, why don't you exercise anymore? I'm like, well, who has the time? I don't have any time. And she basically was like, you're denying this huge part of yourself. Like, this is part of something you've always done, but also enough to know that exercise gives you more energy and gives you better sleep. Like, there's all these other reasons for the good of your children that you should be prioritizing this thing. And I had to kind of reshift, because I think the temptation is to become a martyr in a lot of ways, of like, well, I don't have time. I have to take care of everybody else. And the devil loves when we feel sorry for ourselves, loves when we think, oh, I can't be this good version of myself because I have to do X, Y, and Z. And so it's so important to not think of it as selfishness. There's a huge distinction between selfishness and self-care. And in the same way, like you were saying, Haley, for your kids, we want our kids to understand the human body was made to move. The human body was made to be fueled by good food and vitamins and minerals. And, you can't live on goldfish. And we love our kids enough to not let them do that. And yet sometimes as moms, we'll live on scraps off their plates instead of prioritizing a healthy meal for ourselves. Now, I am not at all acting like this is super easy. It's not. It takes, like what you were saying, Haley, it takes some sacrifice of sleep or some thinking ahead and prepping, and, but obviously it pays off. So back to this idea, these trends, like what were all the things we're bombarded with. One of the things that's so popular right now is a conversation around sleep and how important sleep is. And, there's like a million gadgets. My watch will tell me if I got a good night's sleep. And I was listening to one, podcaster who was like, why do you need a watch telling you slept? Like, you either wake up and feel rested or you don't. And he was like, people wake up and feel rested, and then they look at their app and they're like, oh, I didn't get a good night's sleep. I'm so tired. There is a certain amount of obsession with like gadgets and data, what the data is telling us. And we can all remember, like, we're just human persons, and I know what it feels like to have a good night's sleep, and I know what it feels like not to. So, but when I was doing my health coach training, there was like a whole week we spent on sleep and how sleep is so important for metabolic health, for mental health, for all the things. And I remember thinking, well, no wonder moms feel crazy all the time and are exhausted and can't ever lose weight, because sleep is this huge part of optimal health. I mean, it truly is. We know we need it. And yet, God designed babies to wake up every 2 hours at the beginning, and God is not unaware of how hard it is for a toddler to sleep through the night. So it sort of, again, begs the question, what does the Lord want for us in seasons where the necessary ingredients for good health are just not available to us? Where we don't have the time and resources to do everything we should be doing. And
Mhm.
thank goodness we have another perspective. We have the eternal perspective. We have the perspective of self gift. And we know that these are just seasons and they're not forever. And yet, what can we do, during those seasons where, I mean, I basically didn't sleep for almost 20 years, like through the night or consistently. And that's where you are now, Hailey. And that's where my daughter is, and we were just talking about this yesterday, actually, because she's pregnant and she's not sleeping well. And the baby he was fine. And now he doesn't want to sleep through the night. And so, um, how do we bring that to the Lord, offer to the Lord for something good, but also still prioritize rest and ways to de-stress?
Sleep is absolutely a hot commodity in my house right now, and something I will never take for granted. It's not a
Yeah.
given every night, and that's
Right.
okay. I have, through our experience, and I'm sure every mother's experience, have some new ways of thinking about it. Just a few months ago, we were in a season of extreme fatigue, sleepless nights. My daughter had ongoing gassiness, and
Oh,
we couldn't figure out what the culprit was. She would wake up multiple times throughout the night for a few months in a row. It was the hardest sleep deprivation we have experienced so far, even like worse than postpartum. We
okay.
started cutting out foods, and we ruled out oats, super random, but we ruled it out from her diet, and she has been sleeping soundly ever since. So
Oh,
this
yeah.
experience of her makes me think two things. First, that God truly did make our bodies to need sleep. It's just so good. We need to rest and recover. They're good, necessary things. So we should absolutely prioritize getting good sleep and helping our children to take rest and take good naps, get to bed on time in order for them to thrive during the next day. But second, when we don't get good sleep, we're still called to rise the next day and live out the duties of our vocation,
Yeah.
striving as best as we can to serve with a cheerful heart. Um, so it's so hard. It is so hard when we're sleep deprived, but that call still remains all the more, right? To unite that suffering to the cross,
Mm,
to love and serve God and our families, no matter how good of a night's sleep we've got, no matter how tired we are, to remember and keep being encouraged by those opportunities, those nightly wakings, being opportunities for surrender and for prayer and for unity and kind of
mm,
an intimacy with the Lord. So this, just a note,
yeah.
this I am not saying that I think God wants us to be miserable. In fact, I know that He wants us
Right.
to do well, and I encourage good sleep.
Yeah.
My hope for all of us, for all of you, especially mothers who need it most, is to get really good sleep. And I am working really hard
Right.
to figure out how to get my little ones to sleep well. Um, so if you're a fellow mom with young
Yeah.
kids, I understand the journey that we're on and hope you get good sleep soon. But at the same time, just want to encourage you that I do think
Yeah.
it's so important to just embrace that fatigue and sleepless nights as kind of part of the package and as opportunities just to offer it all
Right.
back to God. So I guess back to
Right.
your
And I
question.
can say it
Saying,
is seasonal. Oh, sorry.
absolutely. Remember, like,
I say
take heart, it will
it
come to
is
an
seasonal.
end.
Yeah, like, it really, and it doesn't feel like it will. When you're in it, you really think, "Well, I'm never gonna sleep again." Like, yeah, and I've been
Hmm.
sleeping through the night for a decade now, more than that.
Absolutely.
So, really, you do get it back. Uh, Okay.
I just wanted to go back to
Oh,
your question. I loved the question you asked earlier and just wanted to dwell on that a little bit. Is there more to life than optimal health? If so, what is it? Um, I think that we should talk about how health is a means to an end, not the end in itself. And we should really be
mm,
striving to find virtue, find moderation, finding balance in our pursuits of optimal health. And as someone who really tries to prioritize health for myself and my family, I've had quite a journey with food, from being overweight to losing a lot of weight. I've done all sorts of diets. I've
mm,
exercised for my whole life, doing cross country and weightlifting, and um, I'm now really interested in, like, getting the toxins out of our house and out of our bodies, and, um, at this point, more interested in a well-balanced diet and, um, trying to do some fun projects in my home of fermenting my own pickles and, focused on the importance of gut health. So I've dabbled in kind of all the areas of optimal health, trying to provide for my family a truly healthy lifestyle. But this list of things to focus on just goes on and on and on, and it can be really
mm,
overwhelming. Um, if we're trying to be perfect or be excellent at all of these things, or to focus on
yeah.
all of the ways to be healthy. Um, so I go through things of prioritizing one thing more than the rest, like sleep, for example, in that
Sure.
previous season a few months ago. Like, that was what we were focused on. And at this point,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how my husband and I can both get some good exercise throughout the week. Um, but I just think it's so easy to make optimal health a god and to prioritize
Uh-huh.
it over the health of our soul. Um, so it's just important to
Yeah.
keep our priorities in check and to truly ask ourselves, why am I
Yeah.
pursuing this goal? And I want to
Right.
share a quick story about my mom. She, I think, is a beautiful example of, like, to kind of answer this question.
Mm,
She is beautiful, very young and active, such an active and generous grandmother to my kids. And one time
mm,
when I asked her why she or how she was enjoying the new gym that she joined, in her response, she told me that she's going to the gym so that she can be the grandma that plays on the ground with her grandkids. And she is.
yeah.
Oh boy, does she love to play on the ground with my kids, jump on the trampoline, take them on walks and on runs. And this is just one example that is just such a gift to me, that my mom is prioritizing herself for the sake of loving and serving her
Mhm.
grandkids and being around for as long as
Yeah.
she can be, to be active in their lives. And so this is one example of
Mhm.
many of, like, why do we cook healthy food? Why do we try to get good sleep?
Right.
It's so that we can wake up the next day to serve and to love God and to
Amen.
be active in our families'
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, 100%. I completely relate to what your mom said that like I said, I've loved exercise my whole life and I've also been on every diet in the world and, it's I've got all my own issues, but there is a shift that takes place for sure as we age. At least it has for me, and I think like what your mom is saying is that I I wanna stay healthy to see my grandchildren grow up, and I want to be able to be on the floor with them, to get up and down, to lift up the very fat baby and be fine. This my whole perspective on health has shifted tremendously from how I look to what my body is capable of doing and that I want to be around a long time to take care of these people to serve. I wanna be able to be useful to my kids for their kids and be the grandma who can have them all over and, have the stamina to keep up with however many overnight and all of those things. And so I think that is the exact right perspective in that we pour in to ourselves, we take care of ourselves so that we can continue to pour out. And that's what Christ is asking of us. That's that stewardship piece. Um and it does kind of segue into understanding that we our identity and our value do not come from what we look like or what our bodies can do even. we are loved and valuable to the Father, no matter what our bodies look like. And really, no matter how we're prioritizing our health, and nothing changes the way the Father so deeply loves and desires us. And that's such an important thing to understand. But we do want to honor the gift that he's given us. And so taking care of that gift is honoring the giver. And that is a really important understanding. So one other piece of this whole movement, optimal health and health maxing, that I've thought of lately, particularly when I've heard a couple of people talk about all the things they don't do anymore. Like alcohol has a really bad rap right now. Everyone's talking about how it's poison all the time. And, of course, there's the carbs and all the things. But I do think we've really lost. I mean, we know this just by looking around. Like the community is a lost art, a lost. People do not understand or appreciate the value of community and the value of communal eating and drinking. And, this is one of the things that for our home, I've always wanted it to be a home where everyone was welcome, where a lot of hosting is happening, where you can always eat if you're at my house. And we eat pretty healthfully. I'm very, very careful about what I eat. But when it comes to a celebration, it's like there are ways to feast, and there are foods and drinks involved in that are just good. And the Lord gave us to enjoy. And one of the things I love so much about the church is that we have seasons of feasting and fasting. And so one of the things we've really lost as a culture are those seasons, because in one regard, we have like constant feasting, like you can get anything you want at any time, and you can DoorDash something at midnight. And, we don't have any sense of moderation as a culture. But on the other side of that, like as the pendulum swings over, you realize people also can be so restrictive that we're also losing something there. And so it's not gluttony, but it's not all restriction. And if we just look to the church, they give us the rhythm. The church gives us a rhythm of feasting and fasting. And that's one of the reasons I love like Easter. We celebrate Easter for 50 days. There is a sense in which the Lord has risen and he is among us, and we are waiting on the Holy Spirit, and there are things to celebrate. And in the same way, during Advent and during Lent, it's a time of preparation. It's a time of abstinence from things. And then how much more do we enjoy when it's time to feast again? And so one of the beautiful things that we can do as moms in our home is establish that rhythm and make sure our kids understand that we don't feast all the time, but we don't fast all the time either. And so there's there is a time for bread and wine. And they're goods. They're goods that the Lord
Mhm.
gave us. Hailey, we were talking about this, and I love what you said about that. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on bread and wine. I think especially from my experience living abroad, and
Yes,
experiencing how other cultures have bread on the table and have wine with most meals. But
right.
my first thought is, why on earth would God give himself to us in the forms of bread and wine if both of them are poisonous? Right? Just think
Right.
on that for just a
Yes.
minute. He wouldn't. He
Yeah.
would give himself to
Right.
us
Amen.
through, like, in the form of goods, right? If, like, bread and wine are such
Mm,
goods, such gifts to us to enjoy. Um, so I
mm-hmm.
love what you're saying about liturgical living, feasting and fasting, there being periods for both, and we're called to both. And it's not just good for us to do one at the time, just indulging or just restricting. It's so important to strive for virtue in all things, moderation, and also super important, I think, to have self-knowledge, to know when to ask for help, to know when you've had enough to eat or drink, because any more will make you groggy or crabby in the morning and less
Mm,
cheerful to your family
mm-hmm.
or less ready to go to work. To know when you need to take rest or to try something new because what you're doing right now isn't working. And just to remember that, like we've said before, like life is seasonal. So maybe something's working now and it won't, it's not the best thing for you, so you can try something new. But
Mhm.
just having that self-knowledge, I think that relates back to feasting and fasting. Like, even at these great feasts, it's so good to enjoy the goods of the earth, but to have good self-knowledge, to not overindulge, but to
Mhm.
truly delight in and
Mhm.
enjoy the goods. And related to that, just one final note. I really dislike the phrase guilty pleasures, and here's why. Because just the word guilty and yeah, those 2 words together, I just really don't like it. Because if you're doing something
Yeah.
and you're truly guilty for it, like if you're doing something sinful, then stop doing that and go to confession, right? If we're doing something sinful, we ought not to be doing that. But if you're talking
Sure.
about having an occasional chocolate bar or even a bite of chocolate every day, which this girl has her dark chocolate in the cabinet, um, then eat the chocolate and bring me some too. Like, I just am thinking of thinking of the Psalms and how many times they say in different ways that the earth is full of the goodness of the Lord. And
Amen.
we're invited
Mhm.
to partake in the fruits of the earth and to delight in creation, to savor the beauty, and to
Mm.
see this act of taking
Mm.
care of ourselves and of our family as part of that, a part in that beautiful creation. So
Mm.
I would say, I'm not saying indulge all of your desires, right? But to
Sure.
enjoy and to know that you are a gift, that God has created this earth for us to enjoy. And he truly wants us to be
Mm.
well and to take our health and ourselves seriously as stewards of his
Mhm.
creation. So, Annie, as we
Yeah.
wrap up, I thought it could be kind of fun just to share some of the practical ways that we practice self-care for ourselves. Would you
Mhm.
share with us
Yeah.
some of the things you prioritize most when it
Yeah.
comes to health and fitness, food, hygiene?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I feel like because I'm in such a different season of life, it really is. I say this to my daughter all the time, like, well, yeah, I have so much more time. I have so much more bandwidth to care for myself. And I do think part of this season of life is about that. It's about reclaiming some of that time and ability to care for yourself because when in those early years, it's very limited amount of time that you can prioritize those things. And it's very important to do. All that to say is I think I do more of it now. I know I do more of it now than I did, 20 years ago. That being said, I do think, sleep is a really important thing. Just in the sense of like I was so happy my kids were in bed that I would not want to go to sleep because you're just so happy that it's quiet. And so I would stay up way too late reading a book or watching TV or talk whatever because it was like, no, if I go to sleep, they're just going to wake up again. So I just want a little bit more time. So just like finding a good schedule for yourself, recognizing I love what you're doing about like getting up earlier. That was always really hard for me, but it's such a beautiful way to do it. One thing that comes to mind, and this has been newer for me, is prioritizing the Eucharist if you can during the week. That has been a real game changer for me lately of just recognizing that if I get that nourishment in a few times a week, that it shifts my whole perspective and ability to like deal with the other stressors of my life. And I say that I don't want, you moms who have little kids and can't bring them to mass by yourself. Don't be like, well, thanks a lot, Annie. That's something I can't do because I never could figure it out when I was by myself and my kids were little. I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Haley, like it's just not the season, and it really does depend on your kids. Like, some kids do great and some don't. So, um, but I do think that movement is huge. And, you can get your kids to do it with you. And so that was one of those things when my kids were little that I just started like we would go on a walk together or we would turn on music and just dance for like 30 minutes because they love it. And then I'm moving and I would see a boost in my mood. And, for multiple reasons, God gave us music. No, music is a huge gift. Um, so I think just taking the time for the little things that those things add up. So, um, movement is a huge one for me. And then, yeah, I guess the sleep piece. But also, finding time to, and we're going to talk about this, I think, in some upcoming episodes about kind of a rule of life or a system of order for your home and a schedule. And I'm not to freak out the people who are like, don't tell me I need a schedule, but just that um, finding time to be alone and to be with friends. So, finding a way with your husband or with any support system you have to like get out of the house, to get away from your kids. That was a big game changer for me. I joined a book club 20 years ago, and that has been this lifeline for me the whole 20 years, because I knew at least once a month I would get out of the house, have a glass of wine, and be with my friends. And I feel like that is one of the most crucial forms of self-care, is to give yourself adult time with other women. Hailey, what are some of the things that you've found crucial beyond just the things you've told us already about, like getting up early, or are there any other things you think have made a big difference?
Yeah. One thing I enjoy doing is putting on makeup, and I kind of threw that out the window a few years ago, just maybe when I started having kids, um, not finding the time for it. And so I bought myself some new makeup recently and have enjoyed just getting ready for the day kind of as part of the ritual of the
Mm,
morning. And it's been a game
yeah.
changer just in terms of thinking about myself as a professional. As a stay-at-home mom, I don't think we often think of ourselves that way. We're not
That
going
is
to a
such a
corporate
good
office,
point.
and sometimes the only people who see me that day are my husband and my kids. But
Mhm.
I just realized that I want to see myself more as a professional in when it comes to the things that I'm doing. They're mundane. They're sometimes gross tasks, but I like to put on nice clothes and um, put on a little bit of makeup and put my hair up and put on some earrings. But just that ritual of getting myself ready for the day makes me feel like I'm ready to get to
Mm,
my important work. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes I'm wearing my pajamas and the
sure.
day starts. But if I can
Yeah.
carve out 5 minutes to just put on my uniform, put on my nice clothes and
Yeah.
a little bit of makeup, then I notice a change, like a lift in my mood and a kind of a readiness
Mm,
to greet the day with a sense of professionalism.
I like
So
that a
that's kind
lot.
of my one
Yeah.
one thing I've been excited about lately.
Oh, good. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope y'all listening have found some solace in it, and knowing that, it's okay to block out the noise of the world and just ask the Holy Spirit to help you steward this beautiful gift of a body. And I mean, somehow we haven't mentioned it, but our bodies really are so amazing. Our bodies are the reason we have our children. So, of course, the devil would like to make us think that they're not good enough or we're messing up or something. Like sometimes it's just a matter of stopping in wonder and awe of what our bodies have done. And so when I hear the negative voices that don't like my, belly, I think, wait a minute. All of these beautiful people in my home have lived here, and that's why it looks like this, and it's okay. It's a good.
Mhm.
So maybe we would just rejoice in gratitude for what our bodies can do and ask the Lord to help us continue to be good stewards of that gift. So we're so glad that you joined us today. We look forward to seeing y'all next time. And in the meantime, keep giving God your fiat in the mess. Thanks, everybody.